Well, hello, my friend. It is Steve Pedersen here, welcoming you to the Dream Highway podcast. So glad you could make it. This is episode 63. If you can believe it, it's episode 63. And today I'm going to be talking about a minute for inspiration, or maybe a minute of inspiration. I have just a minute for inspiration. Hey, the point is that there's times where it's like, hey, maybe you slept late, maybe some crazy things happened in the morning, and you're thinking, my gosh, I don't have time to take my, let's just say, hypothetically speaking here, that you take a good deal amount of time in the morning to get yourself inspired. Some people call that a quiet time. Some people call that meditation, whatever you want to call it. Ideally for me, I like to have a good chunk amount of time to really dedicate to getting inspired, to getting in the right mindset in the morning. But understandably, sometimes that just isn't the case. Like I said, whether you wake up late or something crazy happens in the morning and you're just not able to dedicate that regular amount of time. What often happens? I know for me, sometimes I'm like, well, then I just, throw it out the window and nothing happens, nothing at all. And so what I thought would be kind of interesting here today's podcast, what I think would be fun is to just do sort of an example, give you kind of an example of what it could look like, just a short, maybe saying, hey, I don't have my normal regular amount of time, but I have 1 minute. I have just 1 minute where I can get inspired. So I'm kind of making this up as I go along. So what I'm going to do, I just had this idea, like what if I just pull out my timer and say, okay, I've got 60 seconds to get inspired. All right, so what do I do? First of all, I look around, okay, what do I have? Do I have some kind of book that is of an inspirational nature that I can pick up and just maybe read, and maybe read for 30 seconds or read for a minute and then reflect. So for me personally, there's all kinds of different resources that I like to go to get inspiration. One of those resources is on my phone. I have a Bible app, and it has the verse of the day. And before I even get out of bed, first thing I do is just look at that verse. And sometimes that's a springboard for me to kind of take it somewhere else. Like, oh, this is really interesting. Or maybe you're not into the Bible. Maybe you're into other things. That's fine. For me, I have a bunch of other things too that I could reach for that give me inspiration or a unique perspective. If I just look around, I'm sitting in my office right now. If I look around, I've got some books over here. I'll grab this one. This one's called Easier Than You Think by Richard Carlson, PhD. Easier than you think, because life doesn't have to be so hard. I'm not going to read from this one because of copyright issues. I don't want to get into any trouble with that, but these are like, maybe too little. I mean, this is like a really small handheld book. I guess all books are handheld, but you know what I'm saying. It's kind of a small book in size, and so the pages are small. That's one thing that I can reach for and read real quick. I've got this book that I've had for quite a while. It's called Zen Guitar. And again, it's just like a page or two of inspirational thoughts, especially great if you're a guitar player. What else do I got? This Loving What Is by Byron Katie. That's got some great stuff in there. That's more of kind of a heavy, longer read. I can reach for my Kindle. I've got tons of books on my Kindle, on my iPad. A lot of them are of an inspiring nature. For example, one of the books that I have on here is my own book that I've written called 101 Daily Christian Affirmations. I can pop that open and just get an affirmation. But what I thought I would do, I thought maybe this might be kind of fun, is just to open up one of these books. This is a book called As a Man Thinketh by James Allen. I'm not sure if this one is in the public domain or not, but I'm just going to pop it open and read a paragraph at random. As a Man Thinketh by James Allen, and I'm going to time myself to see how long it takes to read a paragraph. So I'm going to open up the book here, and then I'm just going to grab this paragraph. I'm going to hit the timer, start. Okay, here we go. It says, men are anxious to improve their circumstances, but are unwilling to improve themselves. They therefore remain bound. We could stop right there. That was 16 seconds. The man who does not shrink from self-crucifixion can never fail to accomplish the object upon which his heart is set. This is as true of earthly as of heavenly things. Even the man whose sole object is to acquire wealth must be prepared to make great personal sacrifices before he can accomplish his object. And how much more so he who would realize a strong and well-poised life. All right. Oh, that was exactly 1 minute that it took me to read that paragraph. Now, I could just, from that point on, I could just go out the door and go about my life. And what's going to happen is, even if I don't take time, I'm not necessarily encouraging you don't take time to sort of think about this and process it. But the point is that even if that's all you did was to take 60 seconds to read a paragraph from a book and then go about your way, what's going to happen is your subconscious mind is going to take that in, is going to start processing it. You might not even be aware of it. You might be dealing with the kids, or you might be dealing with the boss, or trying to catch a bus or a train or what have you. But at some point, you're going to have a quiet moment in your day, and you're going to be able to relax, and then what you read that day is going to pop up in your mind. Even if you can't remember specifically what it was that you read, you're going to remember the feeling. You're going to remember the vibe, so to speak, that you got from just taking that 60 seconds. Like I said, even if you don't remember at all, even if all you remember is like, well, I think it was that book by, I don't even remember the author's name. It was As a Man Thinketh. That's about all I remember. And I remember reading a paragraph out of there, and I remember it being, I remember saying, wow, that's really powerful. And I think if you trust your subconscious mind, I think your subconscious mind is a lot more powerful than maybe you might give it credit for. That's because our conscious mind and our ego likes to be, or at least it likes to think that it's in control of everything. But if you allow your subconscious mind to think, now I've been kind of talking for a couple of minutes, and now I'm going to try to think without even looking at that book. What was that paragraph talking about? I remember it saying something about, I think bottom line, what I feel like I got out of it is just taking responsibility for your life. I remember it used this word crucifixion, self-crucifixion. That's not an expression that you hear very often. This book by James Allen was written a long time ago. And so I remember him talking about wealth as well. And so I think what I got out of what he was saying was that if you want to experience your dreams coming true, that it takes sort of self-examination and self-crucifixion. I think maybe what they mean by, or what he meant by self-crucifixion, is a form of just self-discipline. It takes self-discipline to get what you want out of life, if you have dreams, if you have goals and aspirations, it takes a well-examined life. I think that's kind of what he was saying. I do remember that there was a phrase that he said right at the beginning that really impacted me. And I remember thinking, wow, that was. And so I guess what I'm saying is that, okay, what I can do when I have a moment, especially since I have it on my Kindle, I can revisit that. All right, I got a couple minutes now. I'm on the bus. I've got some time, so maybe I can pull that back up. Or maybe I certainly don't recommend pulling up your Kindle if you're driving a car or operating a vehicle, but if you're walking somewhere or you have a spare moment and you can think, oh, I remember, what was that thing that he said again? Because that was really powerful. And so I will bring it back up and says, oh yeah, that's right. Men are anxious to improve their circumstances, but are unwilling to improve themselves. They therefore remain bound. Okay, so just that 60 seconds I can come back to and visit later. That's some powerful stuff. Men are anxious to improve their circumstances. We always want to change. Essentially what he's saying is we want to change the outside. We want to change our experiences, but we're often very unwilling to change who we are internally to see those experiences come about. That's why people run after, they think money is the solution to everything. Well, clearly I'm not experiencing some great financial, abundance or what have you. So I am going to try to make more money. And instead of saying, okay, well, what is it within me? What's going on within me that I'm unhappy about or that is problematic? Maybe I could take a look at that and change that. So just that 1 minute of inspiration can be super profound, have an incredible impact on your life. I apply it to myself right now. I think about, I'm certainly happy with my life. I'm super grateful for so many wonderful, incredible blessings in my life. But I'm aware and I know that I am growing. I am becoming something else. And I have dreams, I have goals, I have visions, I have things that I want to see change in my life. And so I can sort of reflect here and say, okay, what kinds of things do I want to change about my circumstances? And how am I focusing more on changing my circumstances than maybe there's something internally that I can examine, take a look at, and see if maybe I can just get more happy about my circumstances by changing something inward. So that is just one example of just taking a quick minute to get inspired, and it could not only have an impact on your life, but it can also just change. Just that quick 60 seconds can change. Like maybe what it would cause you to do is, you get on the bus and maybe you're normally grumpy. or maybe if you hadn't done something inspiring, then maybe you normally are bright and cheery, but that's because you take time to get inspired in the morning. But let's just say, for example, if you had not taken that 60 seconds, then maybe you would have gotten on the bus all grumpy and given a frown and been complaining in your mind like, why do I have to pay so much to take the bus? And you know what I'm saying? These kinds of thoughts. Whereas you just taking that quick 60 seconds to get inspired could turn your whole day around just because of the energy that you've created and that you're carrying, even on just a subconscious level. Now, let's try this. This is kind of a fun exercise, so let's try this again. I'm going to pop open my book. This is the Tao Te Ching, And I will tell you, I've read this some, and it can be a little confusing, but it can also be very inspiring. So I'm going to get my time clock here ready to go again. I'm just going to pop it open to any old page, and I'm going to hit the counter, and I'm going to read, maybe not even for 60 seconds. Let's see. This is chapter 46, if they call them chapters, of the Tao Te Ching. It says, when the world follows the Tao, horses run free to fertilize the fields. When the world does not follow the Tao, war horses are bred outside the cities. There is no greater transgression than condoning people's selfish desires, no greater disaster than being discontent, and no greater retribution than for greed. Whoever knows contentment will be at peace forever. Now, that took me 43 seconds to read, and you might be thinking to yourself, what in the world? What in the world did that mean? And that's the thing about the Tao Te Ching, is that, it's written. If you're in a Western, if you're part of the Western world, you're probably not familiar with the Tao Te Ching, and as such, you're probably not really familiar with how to read it or how to interpret it. Now, what's fascinating is that we as Westerners are no more accustomed to or capable. I'm not sure if capable is the right word, but let's just put it this way. We have as much difficulty in understanding something like the Tao Te Ching as we do the Bible, because the Bible was written thousands of years ago in a completely different language. It's been translated. There's so much that has gone on in history since the Bible has been written that has changed the way people think and look at life. And so I guess equipped, maybe that's the word I'm looking for, is that we're no better equipped to read the Bible than we are the Tao Te Ching. And I say that to say, like, okay, if I am to understand this passage from the Tao Te Ching, then I'm clearly going to need to take some time and think about it. I'm going to need to take some time and reflect. Now, here's what's interesting. If you do read the Bible, one of the things that's interesting about the Bible is that there are multiple different translations in the English. As with the Tao Te Ching, there are multiple translations as well. And this is just so funny. I thought I would pull up a translation on my phone because I have the Tao Te Ching on my phone with a bunch of different apps. And of course, they've all been offloaded. And so I don't have any of them on my phone. So I'm trying to download them as I speak. And you think, why don't you just edit this out of the podcast? Because that's not how I roll, man. This is real life. All right. So while that is downloading, I'm just going to reread this. It says, when the world follows the Tao, and the Tao is just kind of like their, that's a huge discussion, so I won't go into it. Horses run free to fertilize the fields, which, now that I think about it, just means horses are free to run around and poop all over the place, which, interestingly enough, this is something that I've come across on the bike trails that I go on when I go riding my bike. When I head north from my place, I can either head north or south. And when I go north, especially if I go really far north, there's actually there's horse trails up there, and there's stables, all of that stuff. And when I was going for a bike ride the other day, that's what I came across, was some horse manure on the trail. But the point here is that he says when the world does not follow the Tao, the war horses are bred outside the cities. I have no clue what that means. So I'm just going to go on. And maybe this would not be very inspiring for you, and maybe you would just walk out confused. But perhaps this next section, it says, there's no greater transgression than condoning people's selfish desires. Interesting. There's no greater transgression than condoning people's selfish desires. Now, for me, that's something that I would have to really think about, like, okay, what exactly do they mean by that? He goes on, no greater disaster than being discontent. So think about that. There's no greater disaster than being discontent, or in other words, unhappy. Man, so what's going through my mind as I read this is that there's a lot of training, thinking, indoctrination that I've had from a Christian perspective that, especially this bit about being discontent or being unhappy, one thing that I've heard a lot in Christian discussions is that your happiness is not really God's priority. And I think that's a really interesting discussion. Like, people will always say, oh, happiness, that's just based on circumstances. God doesn't care if you're happy. What God wants you to be is joyful, because that's based on, true internal lasting types of things. Okay, fascinating. Well, let's do this. I finally, this is just so funny. In the background, I've downloaded multiple apps, and I'm like, nope, that's not the one. So I finally got the right app. Okay, so just as I would do with the Bible, I read multiple different translations just to kind of get a different perspective, so I can really mine what I'm reading for great inspiration. Here is a sort of another translation of chapter 46 of the Tao. It says, when a country is in harmony with the Tao, the factories make trucks and tractors. When a country goes counter to the Tao, warheads are stockpiled outside the cities. Well, now that makes a lot more sense. And it's true, right? But okay, so what does that mean for my life? Because essentially what it's saying is that when you're living in harmony with other people, you can be productive. But when you go to war with somebody, whether it's like when you have an argument, it says warheads are stockpiled outside the cities. Another way of saying that is that you start kind of stockpiling accusations or reasons why so-and-so is such a jerk. Let's say, for example, you have an argument with your spouse. Well, let's start from the beginning now. Let's say you're at peace and harmony with your spouse. What happens as a result? You have all kinds of wonderful thoughts, all kinds of very productive, wonderful thoughts about the other person. But you start having an argument, all of a sudden you start recalling or stockpiling these negative thoughts and emotions or accusations against the other person. This is great stuff, man. Here they say, well, in the first one I read, it says there's no greater transgression than condoning people's selfish desires. This one says there's no greater illusion than fear. That seems like like, am I reading the same chapter? That seems completely different. It says no greater wrong than preparing to defend yourself, no greater misfortune than having an enemy. No, what I love about this, it says there's no greater illusion than fear. Like, fear is just an illusion. No greater wrong than preparing to defend yourself. Don't we do that? Like, we get into these Somebody says something and maybe they mean it one way, maybe they don't, and you think they mean it one way, and so you go in your mind, you go to war with them, you go to battle with them, and you create this hypothetical scenario in your mind, and you get all, everything stockpiled to, like, maybe later when you actually have a discussion. It says, no greater wrong than preparing to defend yourself. No greater misfortune than having an enemy. Ooh, man. And then lastly, he says, whoever can see through all fear will always be safe. Man. Okay. What's my point here? It took 60 seconds to read a paragraph of a book that the subconscious energy that it gives you can carry you through the whole day. The next thing that I read took me 45 seconds to read. Now, if you're more familiar, say for example, you're just sort of rereading something that you've already become familiar with, well, that can be good. That can also be a little challenging, because that's kind of what I was saying before. Like, we think we know. If you're like, okay, so I've been reading the Bible for decades. Okay, so I know, technically the words I have a good memory, and so I can recite a lot of the Bible. But that doesn't mean that it's any clear. Like, I can't just rely on what I've already learned or what I've already assumed I know about some piece of inspirational writing. I need to treat it kind of like the Tao Te Ching. Like, if I treat it like, I don't understand this, I want to dig in, I want to compare versions, this kind of thing. But it only takes a few seconds. I guess my point here, it only takes a few seconds to start the process. Once you get the ball rolling, you can kind of pick it up throughout the day. Like I said, you get on the bus, you got a few extra moments to, read through some things, to think about things. Your subconscious mind will start to process things. And then when you're out and about, you can see, your subconscious mind will pick up on clues that sort of reaffirm, like, oh yeah, I do remember reading something about that. What was that again? Honestly, I've had to do that a lot with, my Bible verse of the day that I say that I read first thing in the morning. It could be 10 minutes later, and I'm like, what was that Bible verse of the day again? Oh, yeah. And that's why I have it on my phone, so I can just quickly flip to it. So anyhow, I hope this has been helpful for you to see that even with the resources that you have within reach all around you, there's so much inspirational stuff out there. Don't if all you have is 60 seconds to just get something positive in you that your subconscious mind can start chewing on, to sort of to use the word blessed, to bless you for the day, to create something positive, to create a positive chain reaction in your subconscious mind that will hopefully materialize in some thoughts that will transform your life and make your life and the lives of those around you much more powerful. Well, my friend, that's about all I have for you today for The Dream Highway. Again, thanks so much for joining me. This has been episode 63. I guess if you want to check out the website, you can go to thedreamhighway.com/63. Would love to see you over there. Hey, leave a rating, leave a review, leave a comment. Would love to hear your thoughts on this. Is there a favorite resource that you have to go to get a quick fix of inspiration, if you will? Well, so long for now. Take care, and we'll catch you next time on The Dream Highway.